I'm Max Rice, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
Hello, good people out there. Thank you once again for tuning in to the Matt Balaker podcast. And today's guest continues our tradition of badass Chicago people on the show. He's a millennial who knows how to tie a tie. He was a supporter of Greg Giraldo, A Comedian Story, so I sincerely appreciate that. He knows Sham Sarania, which for hoops heads out there is very cool. He's applying for a new job in Washington. Please welcome Max Rice to the program. Max, how you doing?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, this is a tough application process. I'm running for Congress.
So this is true. What is your next gig, Max?
Is sucking up to billionaires and traveling on Epstein's airplane. It's my next gig. No, just kidding. I'm running for U.S. Congress in Illinois' 9th District, which is one of the most gerrymandered districts in the world. It goes all the way from the north side of Chicago. I'm in West Rogers Park, represent in the hood. And then it goes all the way to Crystal Lake and half of McHenry County. So for people that aren't unfamiliar with Illinois, I have Northwestern in my district, which is Evanston. And I also have Kyle Rittenhouse, where he's from in my district. So it's a very diverse,
very eclectic, diverse,
exactly
wide umbrella. So I can't think of a better person to represent District 9. I don't know the districts in Chicago well, but all of a sudden it's my favorite one.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. Like, I was treasurer of my high school senior class, and I got that, Max, because no one else applied. And I was looking to be on ASB because we could leave for assemblies earlier. And so it was a pretty straightforward process. But I'm curious, how does one go about actually applying to run for Congress?
That's the biggest lie in politics. They want you to think it's very confusing and you got to suck up to some billionaire or like sell your soul or like take some sort of backroom meeting or spend $1 billion. But this is actually my second time running for Congress. I ran for Congress in 2018 when I was 25 years old. And I did it for under $300. And so the law it depends on the state, but in Illinois, it's just you have to be 25 years old. You have to live anywhere in the state. So I can live in the southernmost part of the state and still run in my district. Mm-hmm. And then there's a signature requirement. And this time it was 400. And you usually need more signatures than are required. And that's its own like fun cottage industry. That's why Kanye West was not on the ballot in most of the states, is because he could get the signatures and they challenged him.
So I take it you're more popular than Kanye West. Congratulations.
Oh, big time. Thank you. Yeah, no, I got on. He could get in the ballot, so I'm definitely a bigger deal.
So
I sell shoes on the side.
You sell shoes on the side. Well,
I do.
I like that because it harkens back to an older time where people weren't using public office, and I don't necessarily want to say public service, although you can as like their primary means of making money. Like,
I want to be very clear about that. That's going to be my secondary means. My primary means is trading stocks.
And, and who's your
and so Congress can be
advisor?
very helpful for that. No, I'm just kidding. But no, honestly, it is a shame that I do feel the original intent of politics is they take a pause from their main careers. Mm-hmm. They're passionate about something, angry about something. They put in their 2 years and they're out. But too often now it's like a power or get rich quick or over a long period of time scheme.
Right.
And that's wrong. We suffer.
Yeah. And like, obviously we joke about it, but there are a number of Congress people. I mean, Pelosi is kind of the most recent one where, she with her husband have, a net worth of north of 100 million.
Yeah.
But an annual salary, at least she does, in the 200s.
She's my stock trading hero. That's why you got to invest smart.
What gives? It's bipartisan. It's on both sides. So I want to be clear about that.
Oh, it is. And Kelly Loeffler was a great example of where she was saying, don't worry about the pandemic, but selling all of her hotel stocks and buying up on telehealth. So yeah, it's not a Republican or Democrat thing. It's a human nature thing. And it's also the fact that we, the people, need to do a better job of holding them accountable. Like Nancy Pelosi made $100 million, but she runs for office every 2 years. She keeps winning by like 40%. Yeah. And same with Republicans that are corrupt.
So I've heard some suggest that if you are a member of Congress, no trading.
That rule already existed. So they created like a mini version of that. Okay. But what they've just been doing is just breaking the law and not being held responsible. So that's a big problem too, because as Congress, as you write laws, you vote on laws, you serve on subcommittees, do constituent services, but too often we'll pass a law and we just ignore them, and that's one of them.
So is there really a law that says that if you're a member of the House, for instance, you can't trade stocks, or is it a matter of disclosure?
Disclosure. It's disclosure.
Okay.
So yeah, that you can't not trade stocks. It's disclosure, but there's already been instances of people not disclosing and just slap on the wrist, nothing. Ha ha ha. Just,
yeah, because
we'll get you next time. Yeah, so that's a major problem, and it's not a new problem. Like one of the biggest stock trades in American history was Hillary Clinton trading cattle future options.
Oh yeah,
that she said that she just was doing so much research on cattle futures that she got lucky.
You know, when you're a busy lawyer, you might dabble in commodity trading. And
I was kidding. I'm someone that dabbles in trading. I've lost. My account is now at 0, and options to me is more fun because it is like high risk, high reward. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's kind of crazy to think that Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton are trading options for fun, because that's like the most sophisticated type of trading.
Yeah.
And they're so good at it.
A buddy who was in Tahoe, this is years ago, and he works at a big hedge fund, or he did, and he was chatting with this guy. It was really cool. And they were talking shop, and it happened to be Barbara Boxer's husband. And it was like,
my hero.
He really knew what he was doing. You know, I mean, he wasn't just like, you know, a journeyman investor. Like this guy, Mr. Boxer or whatever, seemed to know his stuff. But on one hand, it's like, I respect that elected officials should trade stocks, because I think the more it's dangerous, Max, in my opinion, when there's this separation of, okay, we're not going to do that ourselves, but we're going to regulate or punish people that do. But I guess the broader point is in situations where people are career politicians and they have a spouse and they accumulate crazy net worths. I mean, not just 1%, you know, like, but 0.001%. How should we, and I mean me as like kind of a normal non-political person, really, like what how should we react to that, in your opinion?
We should regulate it, because I'm definitely more free market, but at the same time, I'm a human being and I live here, and I think we have to think about everything from a case-by-case basis. And if Congress people were more honest and honorable, we probably wouldn't have to have any regulations. But they've just been running amok, and there's been so many newly created millionaires who are clearly using their position to leverage it into other things. And it's not just stocks. Like, we kind of see this golden elevator of, like, you know, politicians will vote for crazy spending in the lame duck period of their bill, and then get a job on boards of, like, Paul Ryan's doing that right now. Mm-hmm. He's running the tour of that. And so the two options are, like, one, specific laws, which are very tricky, as you said, because they are very nuanced, and sometimes you can have overreach. And the other is to vote these people out of office. Like, we have a major NIMBY problem. Is like, we live in a too polarized of a society where Republicans I'll never vote for Democrats will never vote for Republican. And until people are willing to, like, cross over and, like, vote against someone because they're, like, morally influenced, like, against them versus policy, that's what's going to change.
I'm in California, and if there's a D after your name, there's a really good chance you'll get elected, unless you're running against someone.
I think it's 90% of America is like that, because it's like, I live in Illinois, but, like, it depends where you are. If you're in a rural area, or if you're in, like, Mississippi or Texas, like, it's crazy that so many of us don't have options. That if you live in an area, it's only Democrat, it's only Republican, and it's gotten better in Illinois. But, like, last election, it's gotten much better. But last election in Chicago, over 80% of the ballot was blank. It was just one party. And that's
the best kind of government is no government.
Exactly. Well, no, you still had one party. And that's a problem, because, like, even if the challenger loses, it forces the other side to at least appear to be honest.
Okay. Well, I know in municipal levels, in my neck of the woods, there are certain jobs or positions where it doesn't say. So one actually has to do a little bit of research.
Oh, the Illinois has 7,000.
Is it realistic that there'd ever be, like, for your position, for a congressperson, like, where it just says your name but not a party affiliation?
I'd support that, because, like, the Republican Party and Democrat Party are just terrible, and they don't stand for anything. And they're like the sands of time clock, where every 4 years they change positions depending on who's president.
Okay,
so,
well,
I would love that. Yeah.
What party, Max Rice, are you affiliated with in your congressional run?
Republican, half your viewers just dislike, kill him, murder him.
Yeah. Well, the other half might hate. You might get a chance of winning a bet because you. And thank you for your candor and saying like, kind of they both suck in a lot of ways. I guess why do you think the Republican Party sucks less? I assume that's why.
Historically, I will like my favorite two presidents are Abraham Lincoln and U.S. Grant. Those are the first two Republican presidents. And if you want to like take the history of the Republican Party versus the history of the Democratic Party, which began with Andrew Jackson, Republican Party all day. Still a lot of bad history, but everything from internment camps to Dred Scott to the nuclear bomb to most of the wars, most of you have a D next to it, and the R were on the good side. But I'm not going to let the R's get away because there's plenty of
I mean, there's plenty of stuff.
I'm not going to let them. I don't want to be a complete partisan.
The drug war. There's
exactly.
Just a lot of foreign interventions. Cannabis.
Both sides of drug war is they don't do drugs, but we'll sell it in LA.
Prostitution. Republicans have not been great about legalizing it. They're very good at, frequenting some. But I mean,
well, neocons, that kind of drove me away from the Republican Party. And then, but it kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier. Is you asked like, what does it take to run for Congress? And the biggest hurdle is petitions. If you were run as an independent, you would need 10 times more signatures.
Interesting.
And that's why Kanye West was at a disadvantage. Didn't mean to disrespect you, Kanye. But
no. Kanye is a listener. In fact, he'll probably be on. So
exactly. I'm sorry, Kanye. Give me some free shoes. But that's a fundamental problem because it makes it like as an independent, you already have a hurdle because most people are voting the big two parties. And then logistically, it's a nightmare because you need double the amount of signature requirements because most people don't know where they're registered to vote or if they're registered to vote. There's a lot of ways to throw out a signature. And so instead of getting 400 signatures, I would need like 10,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 or whatever. And that's just to get on the ballot. And then I would spend my entire campaign in court. And so I think it's unfortunately, this is the system that we live in. And I think I've done a good job of calling out my party.
I've known you from comedy and in fact, it's kind of a good example of the value of shared interest beyond your political affiliation. And I need to plug Greg Giraldo, Comedian Story, of course. But
let's go.
One of the, I started writing that, it seems like we're always at a politically polarized time. And it seems like each year I get less and less interested in politics. I don't watch cable news. I mean, I'll tweet and I have opinions, but I don't bring it up when I'm at friends' houses generally and things like that. But when it's comedy or it's sports, it forces us to interact with people that if we just looked at their voting record, we'd give them like, I don't. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who hate me because I didn't vote for their chosen savior. How did it get this way, Max? Like what gives?
It's fascinating because like it's weird because like growing up, I did not know where most of my friends stood politically, even though we would talk about deep philosophical things. Yeah. And now because I think social media was a big part of that.
Okay.
Where like people's mental illness and politics have been revealed for better or for worse.
Some things you can share, folks. Some things just you don't have to type. Go ahead.
Exactly. And so and then also Donald Trump. Because I've always been to politics since I was like the smallest kid before I could speak. And I think Donald Trump where like politics used to be on page 17. Now it's been on page 1 for the last 4 years, for better or for worse. Mm-hmm. A lot of times for worse. So a lot of people have fatigue like you, and that's bad because when voters have fatigue, people like me get to take more advantage and do less work and make more excuses and slip in pork on these like 10,000 page spending bills. And so it's really unfortunate. And I wish we kind of got to see politicians like I judge someone like by their favorite movies and favorite books. So it would be cool. Our favorite comedians, for sure.
Yeah. So who are some? I mean, that's a shared interest we have. But who are some of your all-time favorite comedians?
All liberals. Like my favorite is probably Bill Hicks, and he said that like if you watch his bits on Karl Rove and bits on the Bush and the whole both Iraq wars, he definitely was not a Republican. And George Carlin, Dave Chappelle's my favorite living guy. Doug Stanhope, who I've seen twice a few times.
Oh, none of these are. Yeah. Even close to what you call Republican, like at all, like very,
not at all.
Very
but also very political, and like even like it's so I kind of force myself to get into Lenny Bruce because it's like I feel like you kind of have to study.
It just it gives you hit points, like if you're
exactly.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm a Lenny Bruce fan.
I'm not up at night listening to Lenny Bruce, but Dave Chappelle, absolutely. And Bill Hicks, like still to this day, I think are my two all-time goats. Geraldo's on the list for sure. But I always thought there was a main, like I've always was into comedy because I felt like politics, like comedy was a way to get my more passionate political points out there or listen to them. Like a lot of my politics have been informed by comedians. And I think that even like going back, there has been a marriage, and it's been kind of sad to see comedy go in the potty, like
I mean
Uber jokes and like all this stupid stuff that I don't know.
When Hicks came up, or even earlier Carlin, and of course obviously before that Lenny Bruce. I mean,
Red Fox, shout out to Red Fox.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, that's one.
We got that on there, so you covered the spectrum.
Good.
But so you just hate female comics is what I'm getting at.
I do.
Joan Rivers.
Kidding. No, but that's the crazy thing is too, is because female comics were like good, not like Gracie Allen and Joan Rivers and who plays Edna on, I'm blinking on her name right now in Sanford and Sons. Luana Page.
That sounds good to me. Luana.
Well, there's like I'm definitely not men or women are funnier.
I'm yanking your chain a little bit, Congressman. Soon to be congressman, but when they came up, there was division in the room. But I mean, on one hand, you really understood their point of view, but you could think differently than them and enjoy the show.
Absolutely.
Today, if you went to a Patton Oswalt show, and I think he's objectively a talented comedian, like he's a good joke, right? Hugely successful. Would you have a good time listening to him?
I was never an Oswald fan.
Okay.
Like that just was never but like you maybe pick an equivalent that is like still liberal, like Bill Maher. Yeah.
Mark Maron, Bill Maher.
Mark Maron, 100%. Mark Maron, 100%. Bill Maher, 100%. And like even during the whole like when Trump was president, and you would go on Stephen Colbert's, because Stephen Colbert was one of my favorites growing up.
I remember him on Tough Crowd, and he didn't lose like his essence. Like he was still kind of, I'll call it sweet, and he was like going up against Nick DiPaolo, and Nick DiPaolo is really funny, but like they couldn't be more different in pretty much every way.
Yeah.
And they were both really funny and cool, and it gave me a lot of respect for Stephen Colbert. But that was in the early 2000s. Now it seems like he's running for office. Every monologue. He's
lost it. It's really sad to see, because I always did respect him and Stewart because I felt like they were objective. And I think like modern wise, Trump kind of was like a blessing and a curse to comics, like where some had just like consumed them. And you would go on Colbert's page, every video was about Trump. But then I think the Colin Jost and Michael Che on Weekend Update actually had amazing Trump jokes. And I'm trying to laugh first and think, even if it's something I disagree with. And so, no, I don't think that would affect me, but I do think that hyper partisanship has affected some of these comics, where maybe they're less funny because they don't want to offend someone, or because they're what's called too serious.
Yeah, it seems like comedy has gotten much more siloed. Like when there were 3 major networks, you had to appeal to a wider audience, but now you can kind of pick people that think would more align with you and just kind of preach to the choir every show and pick up checks. And so my question is how do I do that, Max? I've been spinning my wheels for too long. How do I just go polemic and just, raking the money for partisan politics?
Don't sell your soul is the only thing that you can take with you. So don't, because I don't think it's worth it.
I will hold out a few more weeks before selling
exactly.
my soul.
I'll get you an Epstein flight card.
Good. Thank you.
It's back open.
The one I have is pretty old. I got to get a new one anyway. So thank you for that.
It'll be nice in the fall. Nice science classes. Stephen Hawkins was there. That's a whole other issue, is that no one went to jail for that. But because so the reason why things are getting worse in terms of corruption is because when there is no accountability for bad action, whether it's like your kids or adults, it's just going to get worse and worse. And there really hasn't been too much consequences for like obvious corruption, whether it be stock trading, Epstein, or anything in between.
So what you mentioned stock trading. I mean, what are some concrete examples of corruption, and what realistically could or should happen to the bad actors?
That's because the thing is, it's legal. It's like one sketchy guy once told me as a young man in life, he goes like, there's what's legal, and there's what's ethical. Pick one. And so that's kind of the problem, is there isn't, like, for a lot of the corruption is legal, of like kind of like the revolving doors if you go from Congress to getting a job on the board, or like one of the most legal forms of corruption is like a lot of congressional people will have family member as staff. And so I can pay my wife $100,000, and that's very common. And it's not a Republican.
Can you pay my wife $100,000 just for fun?
Let's do it.
Okay.
that's very common. Or you could be like Mitch McConnell and have your wife be in charge of all the trade between the two countries. Even though
so Max, I mean, these are your future colleagues.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're going to have to like work with it. I mean, how can you kind of divorce yourself from some of the animosities you might have for Mitch McConnell or someone else, and then like actually find some common ground to pass legislation, or more importantly, prevent legislation too.
That's probably more important. That's why Congress is the perfect role for me, is because it really is more of you're not like overseeing all these people. It is a bunch of individual voices that are trying to bring something to the table. And that even one person has a lot of sway. Like you're seeing Joe Manchin arguably was the most important person in America last like couple of years. And so one is about using your power in an ethical way and not letting the pettiness like get to you. Where it's like a lot of times you'll see like Matt Gaetz and AOC work together because they grant a bill. And so you do have to realize like why you're there and have those priorities first. But at the same time, you got to call a spade. And Congress, you have the freedom to do so. So like, no, I won't be like pretending like these people aren't corrupt or,
Well, you may not have a long career in that field, but I'm glad you'll have somewhat of a career. What are your thoughts on congressional term limits?
This is like such a sexy issue for people. I support it, but like it wouldn't solve anything. You saw what Putin did, where like you have term limits. I would go from Congress to Senate to executive branch to state level. And so I'm for term limits, but we have to be smart on how we write it to not prevent just people hopping around. And so I support them. And I've heard like 3 terms is a reasonable amount, but we'd have to get into
which chamber?
For both. Because that's 18 years in the Senate and 6 years.
I mean, that's just way too long. I mean, granted,
maybe two. I'm for it. I'm for it because it should not be a profession. And one of the big problems is that we've trusted these people to like have our best interests, like kind of like you trust an auto mechanic to fix your car, but they don't. They don't at all. And so they've kind of run amok with that.
Wait, so are you saying auto mechanics don't fix cars? Wait, what are you getting?
I would never insult an auto mechanic by comparing them to a senator. So
okay, thank you. Usually I go and my car is better. When I vote, I rarely get better because of a vote.
Exactly. When you trust the auto mechanic that he's not going to lie to you and tell you that this part costs this amount and this is how long it's going to take. But our Congress people is like, hey, I'm going to create jobs. I'm going to lower taxes. And then they don't, and it's like, it's AOC's fault. I tell you all the time, I call it AOC ate my homework. Republicans blame out AOC and Democrats blame Trump, and it's because they both don't actually want to do anything. They just want to get rich. And one of my favorite scams ever was because you can make more money in a losing campaign than a winning campaign. And so let's call out Andrew Yang. He ran for president to sell books, in my opinion. And so,
well, I should run because Greg Giraldo Convenience Store is doing pretty well, but I could use a bump.
Yes. So Jim Wright, who is the former Speaker of the House from Texas, there was a famous scandal where he like kind of slapped together a book that was just a bunch of his speeches, and then every time he would go to a special interest group, he would force them to buy it allegedly, and he ended up getting out of the Speaker of the House. But Andrew Yang, what he did is his campaign spent like $100K on ballparking on his own book. And so you can run for office and just use all the donations you get from special interests, from people that actually, are donating to your campaign, and spend it on your own book. Yeah, no, I'm giving you, the wheels are spinning.
I haven't never been so motivated to join politics. Yeah. Wow. That is so.
And that should be wrong, but it's like, once again, what do you do when something is unethical but legal? Either got to change the law or make it.
You do what gives you the most money, and then you justify it. Oh, exactly. Here's a good, and this is a kind of a legitimate. What do you think is more valuable, money or power, and why?
You can convert power into money, and the reason why is look at Jack Ma in China, look at all the billionaires in Russia. they don't have power. They shut the power off and they
so it's power and then money. I think that makes sense, because if you have money but you can't muscle
personal peace. I would take peace over both for sure.
Well, thank you, Buddha. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
No, that like one of my one of my more favorite tweets I read, which was kind of dumb, that I'm even referencing, is, or someone's tagline says, "I'm not looking for a third party. I'm looking for a second."
I like that a lot.
What is your reaction to that?
That, as I said, when I usually vote, 90% of my ballot is blank. Mm-hmm. And so even if you're a Republican that thinks Democrats are evil and you're a Democrat that thinks Republicans are evil, most people across America only have one party.
Yeah, and I think what resonated with me is like the kind of classic case study of Coke and Pepsi. They teach us in a lot of business schools, but one kind of needs the other to sort of bounce off, and more importantly, it prevents other competitors from getting like serious market share. I mean, there'll be some other will come in, but by and large, they're brands owned by either Coke or Pepsi, and it seems like the major two parties are the same way. It's like theater, and it's entertaining to point fingers, but what does that do? It keeps them both in power. It keeps them both elected, and if they didn't butt heads, it would be boring, and
we'd be even more upset. We'd be more upset because you would be like, my Republican rep isn't fighting for me. My Democrat rep isn't fighting for me. But instead we have these boogeymen. It's all AOC's fault. It's all Trump's fault, all Nancy Pelosi, McConnell. And I'm not defending any of these people, but that's kind of where we're at, is like they love the fighting because it kind of distracts us from the fact that like we probably do agree with most things.
Yeah. And I mean, my take on that, and again, I want to get yours, is that it shows that both major parties care most about being elected and staying elected. It's a power game. But if there were actual diversity of options, we might see, like, for instance, Andrew Yang, or, earlier maybe Ron Paul, or pick any, and I'm not saying they're all good or bad.
Ross Perot is my favorite candidate.
Ross Perot. But I mean, then we might see, oh, wow, like the two major ones are pretty similar. And you can say, well, there's benefits to that. But I guess in a way, like, I don't know if we're as divided as we are. It's just, I don't know if we really have options beyond one and two.
We don't. And 1 and 2 they can't even make up their minds on their own platforms. And so, and as I said, the reason why is because there's a structural problem that it's like physically and tangibly harder to run as independent. Despite the whole fact that people are kind of trained to vote Republican or Democrat, it's physically harder and costs more money. And so that needs to change.
So
absolutely.
It needs to change, and I think it's pretty clear that our system is set up for two parties. But is it practical to think that can change?
Yeah, 100%. And it's when gas is $10, maybe it is where you're at. It's $6. It's going to change.
Well, the taxes are $9 a gallon. I think then you have to add on the actual material cost of gasoline and all that stuff. But we're going to be $20 soon, is my guess.
We're at $6, but we got free weed, gambling, and crime's legal here. So
crime's legal. That's cool.
Crime's legal. Yeah,
I like legal crime.
We got a lot of crime tourism. So,
but I mean, think of and this isn't a joke. I think a lot of people just love hating something.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, so it's like you have your Fox News viewers who hate one side, and then you have kind of all the other major TV networks who hate Fox News viewers. Like, and it really is like a galvanizing mechanism. I mean, it's like for people who don't like sports or aren't religious, it's like it is a religion. And I know people have talked about like wokeism as religion, but I mean, you could probably say it about conservatives too. It's like what can be done to kind of like
for us to focus on the ball? And I asked constituents that my most top question that I asked Democrats and Republicans is that, let's say I gave you a magic pen and you can go into Congress and you can get one law or bill through, like just no debate. What would that be? And most people just can't answer that question because they're too busy thinking about how much they hate the other people.
Okay,
so,
here's I think you
that question.
you hacked into my notes, Max.
Yeah.
I have this question, but I'm going to answer it, and I'm going to be as sincere as I reasonably can. So if on a kind of practical level, I would say any law has to be under, call it 8,000 words.
Oh, I think no law should be bigger than the United States Constitution.
So therefore, if there's pork, if there's additional things, I'm not to say you can't have other laws, but once you hit that mark, and heck, maybe make it 5,000. I don't know, but
you can make two laws then. Vote on two different things.
Exactly. So that would be my one, and I think that's objectively nonpartisan. That's a very structural, like, it's not it's not a cultural thing, and it would in my opinion narrow the scope of what elected officials are more, and I believe firmly that they are administrators, not leaders. And I don't say administrators as a pejorative, but it's like, they're not kings and queens. I mean,
that law would kind of be in the running for my one law if we can get one through. And the reason why is because
now I ask you, Max Rice.
But I want to just real quickly say, you kind of this is such a major problem that most legislation that passes are just appropriation bills. And Congress realized that, hey, instead of voting on standalone legislation, which could be controversial or good, either way, let's just make all of our legislation done through the 12 appropriation committees. And so that's why you're seeing these huge omnibus 10,000 page bills. And they've kind of both sides accepted, and even good people are okay, this is just how Congress works now. And that is very secretive, very bad, very easy to get all these just crazy $70 million for the Kennedy Center and $100 million for this defense company. And so if you're forced to have shorter bills, Congress can actually do their job and read them. They physically can't a lot of times. They just can't. Harry Potter's 800 pages. And they vote them a couple days later. And so they would be able to do their job, and voters would be able to hold them more accountable. Because right now there's a veterans bill right now that Jon Stewart's pushing. And there's a lot of fights on both sides, apparently because of a provision that would mandate $500 billion more spending. And that kind of stuff makes it harder for Congress people to do their jobs and citizens to hold each other accountable.
Interesting.
When they're arguing over pork and bylines. But my one law is that would be on the list. And then also I really do care about the water supply and our energy grid. I would want 2 nuclear reactors in every part of the grid would kind of be, because I really am fearful about the future of our energy production.
Yeah. And
I don't want to live, I'm Max. I don't want to live in Mad Max. I don't.
You don't want to live in Mad Max.
I don't want to live in Mad Max. I don't want to be siphoning for gas. And people we take it for granted because we have been spoiled by an abundance of energy, that if we don't have that, we're either going to be destitute and begging other countries for energy, or Mad Max. And when you don't have energy, people die, quality of life goes down. And so
I interviewed one physicist who's a nuclear physicist, I guess. And, so I say that as a very big indicator, I'm no expert on this. And he was really sincere that it is the most realistic, tangible means of green energy.
Yeah, it's the pound for pound king. If you really want to reduce carbon, nuclear is the only, and it's sad, and a lot of it's just because history. We look at 3 Mile Island, we look at Fukushima. I was going to say,
it's nothing. But
a lot of that's misunderstood. A lot of that is just kind of exaggerated, and also it's a lot of safety features that are here now that weren't there exist, and just we don't kind of do an actual head-to-head battle versus oil versus solar, because a lot of deaths and problems on those sides too.
Well, one thing that
go ahead. Oh, the Fukushima, for example, people likely have died of radiation after the fact. I'm not a radiation denier, but that was an earthquake, and 15,000 people did die directly from the earthquake. And so, and then I think there's been 1 nuclear reactor built in the last 20 years. And so just we're all looking at old technology.
I think some of the issues is storage.
So that was the big debate, the Yucca Mountains. Mm-hmm. And then because it's just been kind of stifled, we've just been seeing shutdowns largely instead of new creation. There had been some cool new innovative ways to reduce the half-life. like thorium reactor is one good solution to get it down to 200 years, or 300 years, which is more manageable because you're not storing that much.
And how did you get into energy? I mean, it's an important matter, but you're young. It's probably maybe not the sexiest unless you're touting a Green New Deal or something. Why? How'd you go nuclear?
YouTube. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No. Light was my first word actually. And professionally, I've worked for Energy CX for the last decade.
Okay.
So that is my expertise in space. And comedy's just always been a passion and a hobby. And my uncle's a professional comedian, and I've been doing stand-up since I was 16 for fun. Well, and we're doing a tour this campaign, which is probably like the worst idea ever.
How's being a congressman going to impact your comedy career?
I think it's more the other way around. Is how will my comedy career impact my Congress career? And I'm like shocked because I have like I've been kind of keeping a lot of my newer clips off YouTube. I'll put them up there eventually. Okay. But like one of my most recent clips was I'm making fun of Mike Pence and I'm making fun of the head of the Republican Party. And it was right after the vice president debate between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. Okay. And I'm like, we got to focus on what we both have in common. Like they both got their starts in politics having sex with older men, which like just not like your typical politician joke. That
that has a bite to it. It's I mean, it's funny because it's true as well. So
probably true. Yeah, allegedly. But so there is a lot of like conventional wisdom is to not do it. But politics and comedy have always been linked to me, and it really is a way to kind of because most of my comedy right now is. Because I say political and people think like, oh, Republican, Democrat, political in the sense where it's about social issues and political issues, not necessarily Republican and Democrat.
Okay. Well, that just sells some mozzarella sticks in Topeka. So I'm rooting for you there.
Thank you.
If you had to roast a member of Congress, who would be your top choice?
Lindsey Graham, Lady J. I'd love to roast Lady G because I also I am Republican, but at the same time I think it's more honest when you call out your own because it's more of a risk. And he's terrible, and he's like just transparently two-faced and says what he will to get elected, and just kind of a funny character. Yeah, so he'd be my top choice.
I like it. Well, I guess policy or philosophically speaking, Max, who is your greatest adversary or most stark opposite from you?
Historically or in like current Congress?
Either or however you want to answer it.
Yeah, Adolf Hitler and Mussolini are definitely opposite.
Okay, you know Hitler and Mussolini.
Yeah, Genghis Khan I think is underrated. I think he's very underrated. Yeah.
Okay, well now we'll modern history to living.
But I think AOC is like I don't want to like pick on her, but like I do think I am the opposite of that because like we kind of are the same in the sense that like young, like speaking truth to power, but I think they kind of went full on establishment. Right. And there's this kind of breed. It's really sad to see of people that are young and get into politics, and they get kind of like swept up in the establishment donor types. And their souls just like slowly like leave their bodies. So like anyone who's young and sold out basically. And there's some Republicans, like I think Madison Cawthorn sold out.
Yeah, but you might want to party with him if you have the chance. He seems like he's fun.
Nah, not at night.
Well, I mean in the afternoon. Just talk to some of his groupies and then
Exactly. But like I do think because even though I am young and like don't have a filter
and don't want to get teabagged.
I do see myself different. Like I do feel bitter and like what's called like almost. I'm blanking on the word, but like it's almost like I almost extra scrutinize the new young class of politicians because I feel like they're embracing the wrong things.
So if
like the Green New Deal, for example, like that's a resolution. It's 14 pages. I encourage everyone to read it. And it might as well have been written in crayon. It's just not an intelligent bill. They don't even mention nuclear. They want to reduce carbon. The world's going to end in 10 years, but no mention of nuclear. Like that's just
So I mean, are we on like year 6 of that? Or
we got 8 years left. We only
have 8 years left. I thought we had a few more.
Yeah, so don't get a 30-year mortgage.
Yeah, good. I'm going to put everything on credit cards for a while. So if philosophically you're kind of on the other side of AOC, what are some Or,
no, no,
or-
no. I meant like just who I'm the opposite of, because philosophically, no. Like I really like I'd probably share a lot with her, especially in terms of like bringing
Okay.
down the cost of healthcare. Okay, so like let me.
So I guess
answer
who's
that
someone
question.
that you think is just most
Dianne
opposite of you?
Feinstein.
Diane,
Dianne
okay.
Feinstein. Because she's
So
90 years old. She has dementia. She like is pro military industrial complex. Because I share a lot with Democrats, especially in terms of like questioning things, free speech, free expression.
wait, Democrats and
Yeah.
free. I mean, no,
10 years ago.
I said
During
that
the Bush
flippantly,
years.
but yeah, no, in the
Yeah.
80s, 90s, a lot of comedians. It was very much. I mean, the left was
Yeah.
the torchbearers for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's changed, but no, by all accounts.
Only because of just modern. I think it's only changed as a way to antagonize Republicans. But I think traditional Democrat values I used to thought were always pro free speech and like anti big pharma and anti war.
kind of anti-establishment.
Yeah, that's kind of changed. But
well, when you are the establishment, it's a little bit harder to say like don't
exactly
tear them down. So back to Dianne Feinstein. What are some legitimate? And I mean this like we're having fun.
Yeah.
But what are some legitimate compliments you could give about her?
She's great looking. She's beautiful. She.
What about in terms of like the job? I mean, she's obviously done
longevity. Like John, and I really like because I'm really impressed of how she's able to win campaigns, and like she's actually had a few tough re-elections last few times. But like, wasn't she friends with Jim Jones? Like, how do you survive that? Like, how do you survive that? And then she had a Chinese spy driver, and like, I don't get it. And she's also accumulated because part of Congress too and Senate is like where you stand on committees and also where you stand in terms of status and respect. And it is impressive for her to like raise the rank. Is probably one of the top 5 most powerful Democrats or people in Congress.
Like if you were on a flight with her and it was just you two, what do you think you could, and you had to like, pass the time, what could you talk about that would prevent you guys from tearing each other's hair out?
Hunter S. Thompson and like met Nixon, who he was adversarial against, and they talked about football. And so like, I'm really curious what her thoughts are on like music, movies, sports, that sort of thing.
I love it.
And I'm sure we could. And also you have to separate the person from the office. Like there's a lot of, if anyone's into pro sports, like I'm sure there's a lot of football players or NBA players you think are terrible or whatever.
Oh, sure.
But that's separate than them as like human beings.
Yeah.
And they're still probably better than you. Like Rex Grossman's a better quarterback than me, but
probably
like growing up, we would complain about him.
Well,
and so I easily could separate the two, but as a politician, she is objectively terrible.
Fair enough. So Shams Charania, will he tweet out after you win? Will we expect a Shams bomb? I know he's very into basketball and he's a great follow. But
I went to high school with him.
Yeah, will he break protocol for you, Max?
Well, I was thinking we got to trade Brittany Griner for Nancy Pelosi or so maybe.
that could,
Kevin Durant's looking for a new team. Yeah,
don't tell Woj. Go straight to your boy Shams and get it done, Max.
Exactly. Shout out to Shams, and also he's someone very impressed with how he's able to like work his way up.
Yeah, was he? Was he a hoophead in high school? Or I mean, how like?
No, he was a scrounge rat. No offense. We had a basement called the Scrounge, and he would just like, and he's like just a kid that would like hang out and. Very studious, like good kid, like good, quiet kid, but not a basketball player, but always into basketball and always into basketball journalism.
Yeah, maybe it's good to not be so like consumed by something you report on. I mean, you probably like it to some extent, but not be so life or death about it. Well, then we talked some about laws or that you'd like to be create. Like, what is a law that you would love to see just eliminated? And you didn't have to go through the regular legislative means. You could just wave a wand and this.
There's like over 400. It's like they don't even they don't even have a tally. Oh, they don't even have a tally of how many federal departments we have. It's like somewhere around like 430 or whatever. And so I would love to get rid of a few, and a few controversial ones too, or consolidate. So that would be a nice like magic wand to consolidate the IRS or consolidate the 17 different intelligence agencies. And so that would be a nice. Or even like one solution I think would be really cool is like, why are they all in DC? Like, why not have 300 spread out across the United States? That'd be good for the economy, good for keeping them in touch out of the bubble. So that'd be a top cool one. But there really is just so much fundamentally wrong. there's like I was talking about, like the lack of enforcement of law. There's this idea called the Enforce the Law Act that never passed. And that's the idea that like Congress can sue the executive branch if they don't enforce the law. Then there's the Read the Bill Act, which never gets passed. And there's some tweaks I would make to it.
What's that? Yeah, I'm intrigued by this, the Read the Bill
That's
Act.
the idea that they actually need to read the bill. And like everyone that went to like middle school, like we read a book, we'd have to take a test on the book to make sure we read it. So why doesn't Congress like have to read the bill, or maybe even take a test on the bill, like a reading comprehension test?
I love that. And one, it would also slow down the pace of like pushing through stuff like hastily.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then just kind of show like who read this and who didn't. I think that. Yeah. And again, that's not a partisan thing. That's just a due diligence.
No, but both sides don't want that because they don't want to read 10,000 pages. But
and it might work with my hopeful law of just shortening it to 5,000 words or fewer. And then, if you have to take an exam on it, you're more likely to read a 3,000 letter bill than a 300,000 letter one.
And my I don't know the exact word count, but my cutoff is I don't think any bill should be larger than the United States Constitution.
Okay.
Like if you can't beat the United States Constitution for one single idea, then you need to simplify or get a grammar check.
Speaking of the old Consti, what is your favorite or favorites or a couple favorite amendments?
Ooh, that's a good one. 4 for sure. 4 and 5. I like privacy. I don't like talking, despite the situation. Yeah. And then 1. I'd say 4, 5, 1.
Okay. And
I love speech and religion and all that.
Do you have a least favorite?
I don't like. It's weird because I like it, the 10th Amendment, but at the same time, like I hate my state. So
yeah. But I mean, like the concept of federalism and states' rights.
I'm a states' rights guy. I just live in a bad state, and so
hey,
I have a complicated relationship.
I live in a beautiful state that's run awfully. It's
it's really sad. And Illinois has the most amount of billionaires who were born here, but they just move elsewhere. So like I'm out. Bad weather, corruption, crime.
Yeah, my cousin has a joke, or he's probably repeating it, but we're a big Chicago family, and he says the way to tell it's a authentic Chicago pizza is you hold it to your ear, and if you hear gunshots, it's legitimate.
That's great.
So that's for you, because what are you most optimistic about?
I think that things needed to get bad to get good. And I am optimistic that as someone that's been involved in politics my entire life, that people are at least more aware and thinking about the right things and the good kind of woke in terms of like not just blindly accepting things, whether it be the media or the government. And so I really am optimistic about the population as a whole, not Congress, but the voters.
So question authority and as a whole, we're moving in the right, and I
media literate, because I think media literacy is important. Yeah.
And where can people learn more about you, support you, go to your shows?
Check Rice
millions of people are checking this out. So where
I know. Yeah, check riceforcongress.com. There's you can contact me through that website, and then be on the lookout because next month we're doing the District 9 stand-up comedy tour, which is very exciting. We got some jokes that are going to get me arrested or something. So
be sure to check out the District 9 comedy
District 9 tour. Yeah, September and October.
Rice, thank you so much. I look forward to writing you angry letters when you're a member of Congress, and I hope to have you back on the podcast very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to sucking up for you for money. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.